Stüber, and I'm a resident of beautiful Altadena, which sadly is in rubbles at the moment. This is my first happy day since 30-something days, because every day I cried for the loss of my beautiful Jane's cottage, which you see to the right over there. It's burned to the ground in that night. And today is a wonderful day. For the first time, I didn't sleep because I was in fact excited, because the Army Corps today starts with my property to take the debris away. So I'm so happy. So now, instead of just looking to the past, I'm starting to look towards the future. And this is not just a day for me. This is a day for our beautiful Altadena community. We all need to look to the future and have hope and strength to rebuild. I'm very thankful to the governor and to the Army Corps for putting in all this political pressure, all the work, all the diligence. And I have actually received so much kindness and love during this time, since I am in such a vulnerable position. I'm really thankful for that. So that's what I have to say. And I want to introduce Nancy Ward, who will speak to you next. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Ward. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And I first want to thank the Governor and Supervisor Barger for their leadership in getting us here today in such quick stead. And I also want to thank the U.S. EPA for their work and speed that they have worked through to get us to be able to initiate Phase 2 with the Corps of Engineers. And then just all of the partners that got us here: FEMA, our Office of Emergency Services, EPA, the county, the cities, and the Corps of Engineers. We could not have done this without everybody's efforts and rowing in the same direction and working through some of the challenges that we all had. This is record time for this to start, only 35 days, 36 days. It's amazing that we are here today. So with that, I would like to introduce Bob Fenton, FEMA's Regional Administrator, FEMA Region 9.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. This moment marks another important step as we move forward in the recovery process for communities across Los Angeles. The wildfires took so much, but today we take another step toward rebuilding not just homes and businesses, but hope itself. The removal of debris is more than just clearing away that was lost. It's about making property safe, restoring the land, and preparing for what comes next. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is leading the next phase of debris removal with an unwavering commitment of safety, speed, and efficiency. Our top priority is ensuring that the process moves as quickly as possible while keeping the community safe. We know that recovery is not just about clearing debris, it's about the people. It's about families finding their way back home. That's why FEMA remains fully committed to supporting survivors every step of the way. We are providing temporary housing solutions, financial assistance. We are working closely with the state, county, and local communities and our federal partners to ensure that no one is left behind. The overwhelming response from homeowners, over 7,300 rights of entry forms submitted, shows the strength and resilience of the community. But we need more. We want to get everyone enrolled in this program. Together, we are turning tragedy into progress, and today's efforts are another step toward recovery. To everyone impacted in these fires, I want to let you know we see you, we stand with you, and we will not stop working until every survivor has the support they need to rebuild their lives. Thank you to all our partners, first responders, and dedicated teams making this progress possible. Can't wait to get to work here soon. With that, let me turn over to the guy that's going to be responsible for most of that, Major General Kelly from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Major General Jason Kelly. I'm the Deputy Commanding General for Civil and Emergency Operations for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. I normally wake up and think about the movement of goods on our nation's inland marine transportation system, our coastal waterways, how we protect, restore, and manage our aquatic ecosystems. I think about how we sustain our water resources infrastructure. But for the last several weeks, I've thought about nothing but how we recover from the terrible wildfires that this community experienced. There's a healthy buzz in the air today as we get started, as work commences. I am but one part of a very important team, local, state, federal partners that have made this all possible. I stand before you as an ambassador for the 40,000 members of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, all of the experience, all of the talent, and we'll put it all towards the recovery of this community. I'm excited. I've been inspired by those that I've seen, the resilience that I've witnessed, the determination that I've seen. I'm excited to be a part of this incredible mission. I've been in the Army for over 30 years, and I'm confident that what we are doing here today, what we'll do over the coming weeks and months, will prove to be one of the most important things I've done in my career. Incredible partners behind me. I'll now pass to one of the most important partners, a local, Supervisor Barger. Thank you, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. First of all, Margot, thank you for giving me hope. Many people ask me, how do you keep going? And this is why I keep going. Because of residents in Altadena who are ready to rebuild, and I met your neighbors who are ready to do the same. I want to thank you for really being an ambassador to show people the resilience and how strong Altadena is. I also want to thank the president because I know that when he heard 18 months, he put a lot of pressure on the EPA and on the Army Corps. But you all stepped up and made it happen. And I think it's remarkable. Many people said it couldn't be done. I knew it could if we all lean in hard. And last but not least, I want to thank our governor, who has been here from day one. I've seen you more in the last month than I think, well, I won't even go there. But you truly have been a partner and a champion working with the president, recognizing that this is not about politics. This is about really a communities that are devastated. And I remain committed to seeing this through to the end. Make no mistake, this is the first of what are going to be many. But to our Major General, thank you for your dedication and your team. I went out there and said I wanted to hug each and every one of them to personally thank them for recognizing that this is a priority and treating it as though it was their own. So with that, it is my honor to introduce Governor Newsom.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll brag on you in a moment. Just want to thank everybody that's waiting for us to conclude this press conference to get ready to move into phase 2 of this debris removal. As you know, this process over the last 35 days has taken many different shapes. The first process, the most important process, was this DINS process, doing the disaster assessments, just the basic assessments. That was a process that we were committed to getting done in 15 days. They were able to actually achieve even an earlier result in terms of getting all the assessments done. We moved forward with the first phase of removal, which is hazardous waste, with the EPA in partnership with many state and local agencies. There was a stretch goal of about 60 days to get that process done. And as the supervisor said, working with Bob Fenton and others and FEMA, there was an assessment done that it's possible to achieve that within a 30-day footprint. And now there's 1,300 people on the ground that are committed and resolved to getting that done. 65% of that first phase will be complete by the end of the week. The hazardous phase will then move into the second phase, which is the phase that is officially currently beginning today here, not just in Altadena, but also in the Palisades. This process will include the Army Corps of Engineers with their subcontractors, or rather their main contractor, their prime contractor, ECC, and their subcontractors, many that are assembled right behind me. Margot just happened to be the first individual that was randomly picked that had gone through a process which is incredibly important, a process we refer to as right of entry. It's a process that is a responsibility of all of the property owners by March 31st to fill out forms to allow us to begin to batch those right of entry applications and to begin the process of debris removal at the scale that is required to reach our next phase goal. More on that in a moment. We currently have, Bob estimates, around 7,500. I have 7,353 ROEs that were submitted at least last night. Only 315 have opted out of the Army Corps doing the work, meaning the vast majority of people have decided to get this done. It's done for free. Anyone that wishes to have the Army Corps do the work and their contractors can get the debris removed for free. They'll bill your insurance if you have it, but anything above that insurance is taken care of by the contracts that are put into place. I make this point to make an important point. Last night was the first night we saw only a few applications for the ROEs. We need to keep that momentum going. The last day is March 31st. And Margot's testament of the incredible imperative and importance and the potency of filling out those applications, working through some of the logistics of whether or not you want your foundation or not, and how you want this process to unfold, that we can get that done. And remarkably, and this is important, and I'm speaking a little out of school, Margot, but Margot's already working on her phase 3, which is the rebuild. All of this, again, stacking concurrently. Phase 1, concurrently stacking with Phase 2. Phase 2 now stacking with the work the supervisor's done to expedite permits, one-stop shop, the state overlaying their efforts to expedite any waivers as it relates to some of the state impacts. And so she's got her architect already out here. They're ready to submit the plans in the next number of weeks. They're going to stress test the one-stop permitting. She put us on notice on that. And in a matter of weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, we hope folks are out there starting the construction phase. All of this is happening concurrently. It's not just 30 days and then we begin the next phase. It's not just that next phase and then after 6 months, 9 months, or a year, then we begin construction. All of this is happening concurrently. It's happening at the same time. And that's incredibly important that we reinforce that so people understand the opportunity here and the hopefulness that I hope people can feel from Margot's own statements, but the optimism many of the neighbors now feel that it is possible to rebuild and rebuild better. Rebuild more strategically, rebuild with redundancies as it relates to life safety in mind, the infrastructure, the utilities, all of those investments, the life safety, but the materials, the kind of architecture that needs to be done here to make sure these are climate resilient structures and that we don't have a tragedy like this unfold again. 35 days from the initiation of the fire, but not 35 days since the fires were contained, just weeks after the fires were contained. This is unprecedented in California history. Let me give you a specific example. This is twice as fast as the Woolsey fire debris removal, the fire in 2018. Faster still even compared to Paradise. And that is a long way of saying what Supervisor Barger was saying. Thank you, Supervisor, for cleaning out all of the bureaucratic thickets to help make that possible. I want to thank all of our state partners. I want to thank the EPA and their representatives for doing an extraordinary job to date. We're still 65% at the end of the week. We got to finish the job. To Bob Fenton, there's just no one better, period, full stop. And FEMA's just, you know, there's a Hall of Fame for FEMA, and Bob is going to be the first vote into that Hall of Fame. We are blessed. And to Lee Zeldin, the EPA, and to, as Catherine said, she's absolutely right, the president. I spent an extended period of time with President Trump last week in detail walking through this process, walking through phase 1 and walking through phase 2. And that goes to you, General Kelly. Thank you for being out here. Thank you for being here yourself. The colonel's been doing a great job, but the fact that we have a major general on the ground that's tasked to do this is critical and essential to actually achieving the goal and results that are required. Yes, there's a lot of logistics. Yes, this will be a 24/7 operation. Yes, Caltrans and the CHP are working on logistics. But yes, we also have the DOD coming in to help us with logistics. Yes, we're looking at new strategies to address the issue around congestion. For example, on the PCH, concerns around how you get these trucks in and out in a 24-hour operation. So we're looking at dedicated lanes. We're looking at strategies to stress test these landfills. And I mean by stress testing, that's about ingress and egress into landfills. It's not just the availability, which we have for this debris to go into landfill. But it's the ability to get the scales, the weights done, and to make sure you've got the ramps so that we keep these operations flowing consistently. So all of that is happening concurrently. All that's happening with unprecedented support from the federal government, the state government, and local municipalities as well. I know this is hard. I know we're well aware of the friction around staging areas. These are temporary issues. I'm deeply mindful. If you can see those compost socks everywhere that have been put out, and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been working to move from fire protection now to flood protection, that are very mindful of watershed needs as it relates to the atmospheric rivers that are coming in, particularly Thursday at peak here into Southern California, all the way down to Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, not just LA and Ventura. The imperative of keeping our Conservation Corps and the National Guard working on those operations, and that's a big part of another reason why Nancy is down here, and my next meeting is going to be around watershed and flood protection and debris flows and traffic management related to some of the water and the flooding that we are going to anticipate on these burn scars, not just here, but throughout the region and in Northern California. And finally, I will be signing another executive order. This one I committed 30 days ago, asked and tasked everyone in state government, tell me what we're missing as it relates to Coastal Act, what we're missing as it relates to CEQA, what we're missing as it relates to any thicket that we can clear in the spirit of the supervisor to match their imperative on one-stop shopping and one-stop permitting. And so we will have 8 or 9 critical provisions that back right into the work not only the county's doing, but specifically the work that Mayor Bass announced as it relates to her expectations from the state as it relates to what the city's doing. I'll remind everyone we have a brand new dashboard that's up around mobile air monitoring, issues around the 4 remaining water systems, which have do not drink requirements. We have information around the schools. Pally High, by the way, you're going to see that debris start to get removed on Saturday. They'll be down there moving heaven and earth to get that done. All that information is populated in real time at our ca.gov/LA Fires website, ca.gov/LA Wildfires. And I'll remind you on that site, it could direct you. First time in California history, we took these DRCs and we made them virtual. So you don't have to physically go in to a disaster recovery center. This just went live a few days ago. You can go to that URL, that site rather, and download any information or upload any creative thinking and have a two-way conversation, not only as it relates to those that are virtually engaging you, chatbots, but also people that are resourcing and supporting that site as well. Forgive the long-windedness, but we want to shorten not only the speeches, but the time to delivery on this project. And so that's my final compliment. We just said hello to all the folks that were out there, and they said, keep it short, because we got work to do. And I just want to thank all of them in advance for meeting the high expectations and being willing to accept those expectations as it relates to results. So we do this quickly and safely so people get back into a community that's more healthy and resilient than the community that was devastated just 35 days ago. With that, we're all here to answer any questions. This is what they do. Last week, obviously, the rain was a little bit less impactful. We're expecting more precipitation as it relates to this effort, but they've been out there, and Nancy could talk more specifically about all the Conservation Corps hand crews and all the work that we're doing deep with our own state water agencies, working with local agencies, debris as it relates to ocean concerns with the county as well. Issues, obviously, on pre-positioning. We have hundreds and hundreds of people pre-positioned, rescue teams as well, all across the state. But it reminds us the imperative of needing to remove these sites. I know there's some people that want to delay and figure out staging. These are the sites that need to be cleaned up and quickly to address any environmental concerns. And so these sites are protected with what we refer to as those compost sleeves. You'll see those green sleeves or those taupe sleeves all around. That's among many mitigation strategies. And Nancy, maybe you want to add a few others, but this is top of mind.
Yes, so right after the fires, we pre-positioned some watershed management teams to come in and make assessments about the risk areas in both of these burn scar areas and how best to mitigate some of the flow of debris and mud that we could stop. Some of it we're not going to be able to stop, but we assessed those areas and put crews in both fire areas to mitigate those with not only just what you see on the streets here, but on the hillsides and those areas that are most vulnerable to the kind of flow that we may see. We were lucky, as the governor said in the last two, that we didn't get as much rain as we expected. We expect a bit more this time, and so we are having those crews stand by as opposed to demobilizing them, and so that they will be able to pivot and work on any areas that we see that become risk areas over and above of what we've already identified.
Major General, this is not going to slow down your work, right?
No, sir. And I mentioned my other duties. The Los Angeles district is very active in this space as well. So there are things that we are doing to make sure that we're in overwatch, making sure that the work that we have to do, thinking about the staging areas, but we are active and getting after it and anticipate no impacts.
Governor, you know, they talk about rebuilding and plans coming in already. I had a wildfire expert say it doesn't cost any more to build your home fire resistant than it does to go the old-fashioned way. Are there requirements that they do that?
Well, there's new building codes. You got a lot of homes here built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that weren't subject to a lot of those new building codes. So by definition, they're going to be dramatically more resilient. The question is, where do we cut that off? And we've been talking to, for example, Mayor Bass's office. She talked about those 2017 codes versus the 2019 codes, and those are part of the discussions, part of the executive order that I was alluding to and previewing just a moment ago. But look, we're hearing from the exact expert you heard and other experts that for new construction, it's not significantly, and arguably not even marginally more expensive to take these to a whole nother level in terms of creating fire-resistant homes. When you're doing a remodel, there are, I think you have to level set some perhaps additional burdens and challenges, by definition then extended in additional costs. But for new construction, that's important. Here's what I'm most worried about for new construction. It's what everyone's worried about. Just supply-demand, issues of constraints. Issues around everybody accessing materials and supplies at the exact same time, not just those physical supplies, but human capital that's required as well. And so we've been stress testing every conceivable. I've previewed this 3 or 4 times with all of you as it relates to some of our apprenticeship programs, looking in-state, out-of-state, looking, when I say in-state, other parts, regions within the state of California to access the workforce. The supply chain concerns are one of the reasons LA Rises was conceived. It's one of the reasons some of these other organizations are conceived, looking at pooling leveraged purchases, looking at scaling some of the rebuild. And so there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes, including with architects, some of the best and the brightest from around the globe. We were just with a world's leading architect in Japan that is also advising on some of this. And so part of what we previewed at LA Rises was it was an extended period of engagement so that we can make available these resources to the community. Again, we're not dictating the design, we're not dictating the rebuild, but we want to make it easier, informed by the Tubbs fire and their experience of getting substantially 80% or so of that community rebuilt, 5,600 structures, remind you, in the Tubbs fire, 80% of that rebuilt within about 3 years. They're helping inform some of this process. We just had Hawaii was out here. They're nonprofits, not just some of their key experts. We're getting the benefit of some of the best and brightest minds from across the country and around the globe.
Governor, can you talk a little bit more about what this conversation?
Can you give us some insight in what you said to President Trump and what he said to you?
Well, we had extended conversation about the recovery, and he, I couldn't impress upon him more how grateful we were for the work the EPA was doing, and how that work was accelerated, and how that work was coming together. And we had an opportunity to talk to the EPA director together to stress test some of that, who was on his way, quite literally. I was at the airport. You saw him just a few days ago out here, and talked in more nuance and detail. So, as you know, with me and the president, I call balls and strikes. We had detailed conversations, rare if ever you'll have with the president of the United States. Perhaps that's the developer in him. Talking about phase 2, talking about who pays for it in this context, how much is billed from insurance. What does a typical line item in insurance provide in terms of costs for debris removal? How many days does it take? 2-ish, to remove the debris. What about complex cases? And level setting on that. When we talk about getting substantially complete, there's always those complex cases. When we talk about phase 1 and phase 2, we talked to the president that some of that work will actually be done by the Army Corps, phase 1 and phase 2, not separately from the EPA. How schools are done differently, how the billing cycles as it relates to reimbursements are done a little differently. We talked about the assessments of total cost, total tonnage, 4-ish million tons, I think, is what we're estimating coming off this debris site. So it was along those lines. Why it was an extended conversation. Thanks.
You just mentioned the 4.5 million tons potentially of debris, roughly. There are a lot of Californians concerned about where that debris is going to be going, where it's going to be stored. On the Palisades fire, folks really concerned about Will Rogers Park, Will Rogers State Beach. People here concerned about the Altadena Golf Course. I know we have the EPA here, but I'd love to hear from you about what your commitment is to Californians about protecting the environment and where this debris is going to be going. It's half of this state's potential debris for the year.
So I appreciate the question. I appreciate the sentiment behind the question as well in terms of related concern, and we're addressing that. I know local representatives more so, in particular, community meetings and the like. So you're talking about two different things. You've got staging areas, and you referenced some of the staging area sites. That's for short-term staging for phase 1 hazardous waste removal. That process, as I said, will be substantially done by the end of the month, but they'll still utilize some of the staging areas for as much as 60 in an extended period. Bob, you can tell me if I'm wrong, any of you, maybe 90 days. Those sites are completely cleaned up. They're being monitored. They're being assessed. And we're going to hold everyone to a level of accountability as it relates to those sites coming back cleaner than when they found them. That's just temporary staging. Now, as it relates to the larger debris removal, that 4+ million tons of debris, a lot of that is recycled. You have some concrete that can be recycled, some that cannot. You got wood chips that can be recycled. You have steel that can be recycled. So that reduces the total tonnage and waste. We have identified all the facilities. The Corps, Major General, has identified all of the landfill sites and there's availability in those sites. The challenge now is just logistics as it relates to ingress and egress and scales, and that's why the DOD is coming in, and that's why Caltrans and CHP are part of this, because again, this is a 24-hour operation. If we're going to get this done and we're going to do justice to the commitments that the President's making, the state and local government want to meet. And as it relates to that issue, they're met to the highest levels and standards, and let me reinforce that. There are a few states, it's one of the reasons you love California, some people are frustrated with California, is we tend to do more than most other states as it relates to issues like protecting public health and related issues associated with soil sampling as it relates to issues of air monitoring. We have our own California EPA that is supplementing a lot of that work, including the mobile air monitoring that we're doing as it relates to benzene and arsenic and lead, that we're also populating on that website and making transparent, that are supplementing the work the U.S. EPA is doing in some of the local air quality districts. So it's supplementing all of the regional, local, regional, state work and federal work, and making sure we're transparent and accountable along the lines of your concerns and questions.
Governor,
Sorry.
Edison is now probing whether its electrical equipment sparked the Eaton fire. As we know, their equipment did spark the Woolsey fire, the Thomas fire, PG&E was blamed for the one in Camp Fire, and ultimately in the settlements, ratepayers bore the cost. If SoCal Edison is found to have started the Eaton fire, will ratepayers have to pay the cost again? And what is being done to make sure that electrical equipment does not spark future fires?
So we've got to unpack a lot of this. There's no soundbite here, so you may want to keep the camera rolling. I was deeply involved as it relates to the Camp Fire, and the reason I start there, that led to the bankruptcy of the largest IOU, investor-owned utility in the United States of America, Pacific Gas and Electric. The process to get them out of bankruptcy led to the creation of a wildfire fund. That fund was set up with 3 IOUs that participated, including Edison, that have been paying into the wildfires fund to create a contingency that would allow them to access the resources and the dollars in that fund for precisely the concerns that have been raised as it relates to the possible and potential culpability, of which no one has assessed that. No one. Anyone who asserts that is asserting things without evidence. I don't think that. I know that on the basis of a deeply independent investigation that has profound economic consequences and a lot of litigants attached to it in terms of its ultimate determination. So I'm not predetermining anything. But in the expectation of another major wildfire occurring, SB 1054 was created, this wildfire fund, that has up to $21 billion of claims paying resources. Last I checked, and forgive me, no notes, and you caught me not off guard, but not necessarily up to speed on the exact numeric, but roughly $12 billion of cash was in that, but the ability to then even finance beyond that up to $21 billion exists. I have independent experts that helped us create that fund in partnership with the legislature that are also looking and stress testing at its capacity to weather a worst-case scenario along the lines that you suggested, without impacting ratepayers to the extent possible. Again, stress testing the system, or at least the design of the wildfire fund that was created. Now, you have a FAIR plan, which is not a state-owned plan. I impress upon all of you. It was conceived in 1968. It's not a taxpayer-funded plan, the FAIR plan. It is a syndicate pool made up of the admitted market, meaning your insurers, and they have reinsurance. They're in the process, and I believe in a few hours, the insurance commissioner, I'll let the insurance commissioner talk about the status of the FAIR plan in relationship to, I know it's separate and above, but it's important, and derivative part about their claims capacity as it relates to their current assessment of the damage and the impact to their policyholders. So again, too early to make that determination as it relates to Edison. If there's a determination of responsibility, culpability, their relationship to that fund exists. That is not the case in LA with their utility. They were not part of that fund. And so that's a separate question as well, which we're also gaming out and stress testing.
Well, the secondary building will begin concurrently, but do you have any sense of what the timeline for completing all of debris removal will be?
Well, there was nothing. I had 5 conversations, and they said, we don't want to talk about that, Governor. We just don't want you to throw out a date. They said, whatever you do, don't put out a date, because I want to be cautious here. I'm desperate to tell you, and on this date, we're going to get all this done. And it's just not fair to them at this point. But I am resolved, as the President of the United States, to do this in unprecedented, record-breaking speed. And we've achieved that through the first few phases. And I'm confident that can be done if we all row in the same direction and we work across our differences in the spirit that's required at this moment. I'm not going to say that's easy. This is a massive effort. And you've seen, again, remember, the last parcel, when we talk about something being completed in 9 months, that's the last parcel, right? So meanwhile, there's all kinds of work being done for months and months and months on all the other parcels, which is the important part, as you suggest in the frame of your question, which I appreciate, the notion of concurrence. This idea that you'll start to see rebuilding happening in the next few months here and in Palisades. But they have estimates in that 9 to 12 month range.
I like it. Governor, I would say that.
And Bob is going to see. This is when they
I was just
hold on.
Say,
I'll answer.
I think if you want to help us go fast, we need the rights of entry in. The quicker we can get those in and cluster them together, the faster we'll go. So it's really a community effort. This is federal, state, local government, and the community working together. The quicker we get those, the more efficient and the quicker the Corps can go and moving the debris.
And let me just reinforce that. As I said, and I may have mentioned it, may have gotten lost just in the beginning of my comments, we saw a remarkable number of people within the first days and weeks get these rights of entries, these ROEs, back to the county. Again, this all goes to the county. And then goes through this process, opt-in, opt-out, and then that process now is around batching those together. We've got about 114 right now that we are operationalizing today. 79 here in Palisades, or excuse me, in Altadena, the rest in the Palisades. But they're not batched yet. And so the idea is to batch them, to coordinate these, so we're using scales of economy and we can deal with the logistics issues in a much more strategic way. And so getting these, I mean, we're 65-ish% is not where we need to be on those ROEs. It's so important to get people to know March 31st is that deadline, and we can't impress upon people more the importance of that. And then there's issues. There's always going to be outliers. There's deed issues that are challenging. There's these deeply complex cases, which we always have to be mindful of. You've got the commercial side of this. It's a slightly different operationally than the residential side. And then the very thoughtful question, and forgive me, on utilities and undergrounding, all of that, I assure you, is deeply in our mindset. And we want to make sure when we're doing one trench, we're doing it for as many municipal and private purposes at the same time, which is easier to say than do at scale, but we have teams operationally focused on that, and I can assure you that it is our absolute imperative, not just intention, to make sure undergrounding is a big part of that. Some cases that may not happen immediately, as was the case in camp. They do temporary polling before they do the ultimate undergrounding, so there's some staging there just in terms of just level setting, but that absolutely is a big part of the overall life safety efforts. Thanks.
Insurance Commissioner of California, Ricardo Lara, has talked to insurance companies and is asking them to pay the full coverage to the clients affected without an itemized inventory of things, because most of it are correct. However, some of our viewers have expressed some interest, some concerns, because FEMA help is not coming fast enough. They say they're facing a lot of questions, a lot of requirements. What would be your answer to all those things?
Well, Bob, you want to take the FEMA side? Take advantage of Bob being here.
So FEMA can provide homeowners with a grant up to $43,000, a direct grant to them for home losses or impact. It's obviously not going to make you whole. So insurance is very important. We could also provide $43,000 for property losses. On top of that, you could get loans from SBA, and other things to help with that. One of the things we can't do is duplicate other funding that may be available through insurance. We recognize that there's a lot of insurance here. We do also recognize a lot of people will be underinsured from here. The good news is in the last year, through legislative activities, we can now help people that are underinsured, whereas before we were not able to. So the quicker that people could get us their insurance information in and let us know what's covered, what's not covered, the quicker we can make decisions on the rest, on those two grants for $43,000, $600, I think it is, on both of those. And then at the same time, you can use SBA, and it's a $500,000 2.56% loan to help with some of those gaps. But we do anticipate the gaps. The good news is we can help now. We do need that information from the homeowner as far as what they're underinsured by.
In the state, if you're eligible for $43,600 under FEMA, the state provides an additional $10,000 to individuals. Yeah, well, that's a separate topic, but maybe not. It's maybe related for different reasons. We had extended conversations around water policy. We'll see where things, how they play out. There was an executive order the president signed that had a 15-day timeline. I think over the weekend that timeline expired, and so I imagine they'll be presenting their new approach, their new strategy in very short order. We'll react to what actually occurs, not what's hypothetical, but we did have an extended conversation. Of course. Obviously, we're gaming all those impacts out. And look, these tariffs are nothing more than taxes paid by consumers, paid by taxpayers. So by definition, they would impact some of these efforts. So I hope those things are considered. And look, these things are well within the consciousness of the administration. I think they understand that, and they understand, again, with a president who deeply understands the issues of material and related development and redevelopment costs. So we'll see, again, all these things play out. Fire and fury signifying something, nothing, situational, negotiating strategies. These things, we'll just see how they play out, and we'll react to actually what happens, not what is asserted, and so clearly that is on our mind, but more broadly, even beyond just that proposal itself or the implications of that proposal. I'm more worried the totality of the laws of supply and demand. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you so much.